Hey, thanks for checking out the Dark Sands album. It means a lot to me. This album and your support and listening to it, I just thank you so much. The re-release here is, I think, long overdue. It was just a couple months ago that I was like, wait, I should put this on YouTube. I don't know why I hadn't thought of that before. So here it is, and I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Let me know your favorite song. Let me go. Actually, more importantly than that, let me know what kind of energy you got from the album in general, because that is the most important part. There is, obviously time for interpretation, and whatever it means to you is what's most important. And your interpretation and the way that you feel about whatever particular song that you listen to, that's the real interpretation for you. I also wanted to talk about some behind the scenes stuff in this video, just for fun, just background stuff, things that led up to the album, and then kind of where I've gone a little bit since. As you might know, this album is 7 years old. I mean, it says Dark Sands 2017 on it, so you've probably already figured that out. But I originally only released it on Bandcamp. I don't really know why. And then now I'm like, well, I listen to most of my music on YouTube, and so I think it'd be nice to put Dark Sands on YouTube and have it be there. This channel is becoming kind of a repository for all of the things that I care about that are able to have a video made about it without me, spending an enormous amount of time doing it. YouTube shorts of me climbing, uploads of my music and stuff like that. Generally, just things that I care about, and there'll be more in the future, of different things in the blogs and topic discussions, and maybe a podcast. We're planning to do a podcast with a couple of my friends, but that might be on a different channel. I don't know. Anyways, we're getting off topic. I'm just excited to have this Dark Sands album here on YouTube, posted with the rest of my stuff, and Silk Flower is here as well. So rolling all this back to like in time, I wanted to talk about the origin of Dark Sands, kind of how it started. So in order to do that, we actually have to go back a little bit further before I ever worked on that. In 2015, kind of at the beginning, I March or so, I realized that I had already been making music for like 3 years or so, and I realized I hadn't really been taking it very seriously. Up until that point, I had been just kind of dinking around. This is a story I should tell in a different video sometime. There's a lot to it. It's hilariously bad. Like my original motives for making music, the things that I wanted to do, the things I thought would be easy, the fact that I thought I could just get onto my favorite label on my first try and make a song that was so good that I could live off of iTunes sales for the rest of my life on my first attempt. Yes, that is something I actually thought. I was 17. I have no explanation. I'm sorry. There's a lot more to it than that though, and it's all bad. So yeah, maybe someday I'll make a video about that whole journey. It's terrible, but we're gonna start at the relevant part in 2015, where I was aware of all of that, obviously, and I was like, I'm kind of being an idiot. I need to take this seriously. Kind of the initial taking it seriously wasn't that well done. And I made this album, this little LP, really, called Rising Seas and Hidden Depths. And I released that in June of 2015. It was bad. I knew it was bad. It was like a day afterwards that I was like, man, I gotta step it up. For real this time. I gotta step it up. And so I did. I ordered some books. I watched, full courses on synthesis. I learned what the heck I was doing, at least to some reasonable degree. And then over the course of that, as I was making songs in practice, I was also kind of getting bored with the idea of just making music for the sake of it. I was like, no, there has to be something behind it. There has to be story. So I wrote a little book called Uncharted. It's like 70, 80 pages, something like that. I haven't read it in a while, but kind of a novella, I guess. Long short story. It is bad. Okay, it's got the worst self-insert character of all time. It's cheesy, it's cringy, it's hilariously bad. There's typos and bad grammar, and there's random sentences and paragraphs where I just turn right to the reader and start preaching about ideas that I had at the time, not even remotely well written. And part of that was just kind of me being the way that I was when I was 20. But a lot of it also, I think, was because from the get-go, I did not intend to publish that book. I was just like, this is for me to have a story to write music about. I'm going to publish the music, and that's it. This story doesn't really matter. So I didn't really put a whole lot of care in, to the typos and making it not, particularly cringy. I knew that if anyone were to read that, I was going to be embarrassed. From sentence one, I was just I didn't care. But in February of 2016, when I published the LP of Uncharted as well, same name, it was kind of the soundtrack, right, for the book. That was the concept that matters, right? Making music about a story that I'd written. And that's kind of where it all began. But right as I published it, I was like, man, I think I got to step it up a notch. And I remember I saw on Facebook memories the other day of like my post of like me thinking this out loud kind of as a status. And I was like, I need to kick it up a little bit. And so I decided I was going to do a whole album, not just a little LP. And it was going to be a full length novel. And I was going to publish it. And that was going to be my intent from the get go was no slacking off, no dorky, whatever the hell. I want to publish a book and have it be worth reading. And so I did. That became Dark Sands. And there was a lot of inspirations that kind of all conglomerated into the idea of what that was. Honestly, I'd probably have to make a separate video, then a little like epilogue, I guess, here video. You know, thanks for watching all that, right? At the end of the album, I'd probably have to make a full different video to discuss the whole breadth of it. But essentially, I was inspired by, you know, Shadow of the Colossus, Lord of the Rings, Belane's Colossus album, The Walking Drum, you know, all these kind of bits of media that portrayed this vast expanse of a very discoverable world. In terms of Lord of the Rings, the aspect of, you know, a group of cool people getting together to do an important thing, that was, you know, a huge influence with the plot of Dark Sands. The elements of, you know, stone colossi rising from the ground was inspired by Shadow of the Colossus and Belane's Colossus album, or EP, I guess. And with The Walking Drum was, you know, inspiration for kind of the wandering aspects, along with Lord of the Rings, and just going across these vast distances and these cool locations and place to place, kind of like The Hobbit as well. And so all these inspirations came together to form all of that. But there was also inspiration from bits and pieces of other things, and it was definitely its own story, right? Another thing that was an inspiration for this was, at the time, I had like all the time in the world on my hands. Long story, essentially I had health problems, and so I was living at home after high school and wasn't really capable of like doing a whole lot. And as much as that sucks, I took the opportunity to try to like find myself in here, and I did what I could with that. And so a lot of that involved, this is potentially, you know, I look back and I'm like, why did I like do that? But I drove out into the mountains like multiple times a week. I had a truck and I would just go out there, find a mountaintop, and I would just go and sit, and I would just like think and just try to figure out who I was and what I was doing and try to sort through my situation and all of that. And it was kind of a blessing in disguise, I suppose, because I really did find myself. And I think all that time looking out, you know, I grew up in rural Nevada, and so mountaintop is usually pretty high and vast expanses of pretty blank land all around it. And oftentimes there would be, you know, sheets of gray clouds overhead, and maybe it would be a little bit chilly, and, you know, some, you know, little bits of rain falling, or gusts of wind and stuff. And I just kind of grew to have this fondness for, and this association, I suppose, of, you know, distant vast views from a vantage point of some sort just became like this magical thing for me, because I liked it just for what it was, but I also associated that, and I still do, with like self-reflection and just kind of really important things that I think everyone should do, you know, internally, of figuring yourself out, and how you work, you know, and knowing that about yourself is pretty important. And so this is when I was discovering that, as well as discovering what I was actually doing. All of this during the time that I was before, and then during the time that I was writing Dark Sands. So it all worked its way into the vibe and kind of the tone of the book and the album as a result. So in April or May of 2016, at the beginning of working on the project, I made this song that I didn't have a whole lot of like instruments on hand at the time. So it was just a nylon guitar that was used kind of in like a very stereotypical like Arabic scale, but it spoke to me, and I was like, something about this just hits me just right. I don't know exactly what it is. The description I just gave of like why it matters so much to me, I suppose, is the closest that I've gotten to understanding why that kind of desert, you know, Middle Eastern instruments and field recordings and setting the scene with ambiences is like so important to me. I think that's why. But it struck this chord with me to have, you know, thunderstorm ambience, in this case of this first song, field recordings helping set the tone and the scene for what the song was trying to portray. And these, you know, Middle Eastern instruments, and sometimes Oriental as we go further into albums like Soap Flower, and just kind of getting a feel for like, these songs are telling a story. It's not for the dance floor. It's not for your laptop speakers. It's not for listening to in the background while you're doing whatever. Like, it was intended as atmospheric, intentional listening, active listening. And, you know, you can listen to it in other ways, whatever works for you, obviously, but that was the intent, right? And that's still the intent for every piece of music I make, is like, this is the activity. There's a lot going on here, you know? And I think that really, you know, the vibe of that, but also mostly the vibe of like the atmosphere of the songs really spoke to me. And like I said, I don't know if you can tell, it's just like this magical thing for me where it's just, I can't say what I want to say about that in any other way than with music. It's like impossible to truly describe what it feels like to make and to have the final result of music like that. And so, to be able to share an album like Dark Sands, where I feel like it pretty accurately portrays like what I was feeling at the time. And so I'm so nostalgic about it. And I remember, when I initially released it, there's a lot of support, and I was just like blown away by how many people relative to me, it's not like I made thousands of book sales or anything, but like relative to me and my relatively small circles, and, being a small artist and not really promoting it and stuff, like quite a few people were like interested in my book, and they're like, hey, that was good. Like that was genuinely nice. And I was like, for real? Like, that's great. And so it's also where I learned to, during the making of this album, understand that sharing art is something that you should always do, but expecting everybody to like it is something you should never do. And you should always be making art with the intention of sharing it, but also with the intention of, rather the mindset, not the intention, the mindset of this values, I have value for this regardless of how anybody perceives this or takes this. Someone can, I remember I had a dream during the making of, I think right after I made that first song that I was mentioning, I had a dream that song was being played at a stage, and I was in the audience, and I was so nervous because I was like, that's my song that's being played, like on the speakers, like I'm so scared, like I hope the audience like reacts to it, and like what am I gonna do if they don't? And like there was some like claps and stuff, I remember, and some people were like, yeah, like haha, and then one guy stood up and was like, nice Taco Bell song, and I was like, what does that mean? Like, and so I remember discussing this with some friends, and they were like, that probably interpreting it like subconscious, right? Of like, you're probably scared of people interpreting your music wrong, not for what it was, intended to be. And I was like, that's probably true. That's probably true. And so, as valid as that is, and as much as I hope that people interpret at least the general idea of like what I'm trying to get across with this music, I don't care too much anymore of like, oh, I hope you get this exact vibe. Like, that's cool, but the vibe that you get is the vibe that works for you, and your interpretation is what matters for you, right? And so that's the real one for you. That's just what it is. Like it shouldn't matter to me, and it doesn't anymore. But anyways, I'm getting off into the philosophical elements of this, which is a huge part of it, but I don't want to make this video too long. And so, this album, like I was saying, is where I learned to like separate that for myself. Like, hey, there's a clear intention for what I'm making, for the story that's being told by this music, and it's okay if that doesn't come across to everybody. I can do my best. I can put it, my best effort into all of this music, but people are ultimately going to have different interpretations of it, and that's okay. And I learned to value that mattering to me, and whatever it means to me, that's all it needs to, and anyone else liking it is a bonus, while also holding on to the idea that if my music and my books can positively impact even one person, then it was all worth it, right? Beyond the self-fulfillment and the enjoyment of it. And so this album is it's pretty important to me. I really am happy that I did that. It was a big task for little old 20-year-old Brian, but I did it, and it's out there now, and now it's here on YouTube in kind of a more secure place, I suppose, and a lot more accessible, and it's really fun to have cover art for it. Anyways, thanks for watching this video and for listening to the Dark Sands album. I do really hope that you enjoyed it. Again, let me know what your favorite song was. Let me know your interpretations of things, and then if you happen to want any of the books that I've still got sitting around from having it in print, I will send you one. But for now, thank you for listening. I will see you soon with, what will I see you soon with? I don't know, probably a climbing video. Bye.